Congressman Ben Cline, Republican from Virginia, is with us. Can you bring us in the room here, Congressman? It looks like the second round will be late morning tomorrow. We're just learning here based on our reporting from Capitol Hill. Is that what you're prepared for?
Well, we're prepared to go as long as it takes to elect Jim Jordan our Speaker. He's our Republican nominee. He won the nomination, and we're standing by him. You know, Speaker McCarthy took 15 votes, and it took a while to get him elected. And if the same ends up happening for Jim Jordan, we'll be happy to go as many rounds as we need to, because we've got a lot on our plate for the American people.
Well, to that point, Congressman, when Kevin McCarthy was going those 15 rounds in January, you had a large stretch of the year before you had to deal with things like funding, raising the debt ceiling. We're working with the clock here of November 17th to avoid a government shutdown. We're expecting the White House is going to be sending a supplemental funding request to Congress imminently to deal with aid to Israel and Ukraine. Is it not a little bit more pressing now? Should he be allowed to go that many rounds?
Well, time is short. We have a lot we need to deal with, and you're absolutely right. We only have about 30 days left before the continuing resolution runs out. So we need the Senate to come to the table. We've passed about half of our appropriations bills, and the Senate hasn't passed any. So we need to get things rolling over there. But once we have a speaker, we anticipate a lot of conversations happening very quickly.
Well, can you give us a sense of the math right now, Congressman? 20 members, first of all, voted for someone other than Jim Jordan, 20 Republican members. A lot of folks thought that was a much bigger number than they walked in today expecting, suggesting that there might be more weakness in a Jordan candidacy than they thought. Was that your view today? And how is it possible to turn around that many lawmakers who seem to want anyone now other than Jim Jordan?
Well, there are a number of people who have concerns, and they're in conversations with Jim Jordan right now to try and address those concerns. They really fall into three groups. You have members of the Appropriations Committee who want to make sure that we can get the government funded in time before the expiration approaches next month. We have defense hawks who are concerned about support for Israel. Jim Jordan stands strong with Israel, and we want to make sure that we do support our friends in Israel as they defend their homeland. And then we have members who are in New York and other districts that were won by Joe Biden who are just anxious and want to make sure that we have a conservative speaker who can get things done, who can make sure that ultimately we retain this Republican majority after next fall's elections.
Okay, so Congressman, my sense from you is you are willing to see this through as long as it takes to get Jim Jordan the gavel. And yet, as you also talk about things that you need to get done, I wonder what you think if it does take a long time for him to flip all of those different groups of whom you were just referencing, if you would support the notion of giving Speaker Pro Tem Patrick McHenry more power in the interim to get some of that work done while Jim Jordan tries to do his own work.
I don't know many of my colleagues who are supportive of the idea of giving the temporary speaker more power, because he is that. Temporary, and his position was only created after 9/11. And so this is the first time we've ever used this office, and really its job is to help elect a permanent speaker. My people speak through me, and in turn, I represent them in voting for a speaker. I want to make sure we get a speaker who represents not just the Republican conference, but all of the people of this country. And so we're hopeful we can get our speaker permanently elected and not have to resort to temporary measures.
I'd like you to hear what Kentucky Congressman Tom Massey had to say, your colleague from Kentucky, and his level of optimism about Jim Jordan as long as this process keeps rolling. Here's what he said.
At some point, if Scalise is voting for Jim Jordan and Kevin McCarthy is voting for Jim Jordan, you look kind of silly to vote for them. This is the reason Jim Jordan is the only viable speaker candidate we have. He's the only one who can get elected without cutting deals. Everybody, and that was the demise of Kevin McCarthy.
Is that the strategy at this point, Congressman? Just wear them down so they vote for Jim Jordan?
Well, I'm hoping they would vote for Jim Jordan because they support what he stands for, a conservative agenda, fighting for the American people. I would never call my colleagues silly for supporting somebody else, but I would say that hopefully Congressman Jordan will sit down with them, get to assuage their concerns, whether it's about defense spending, whether it's about making sure the government's funded past the expiration date of the CR, whether it's making sure we retain our majority next November. Jim Jordan's going to be able to meet all those expectations and more and deliver on that conservative agenda. It's my hope that we win tonight as opposed to having to go to tomorrow or the next day.
Congressman, you speak of the conservative agenda, and frankly, Jim Jordan, and I'm sure you would agree with this, is more conservative than a lot of individual members of the Republican conference. Bloomberg actually had some analysis out on voting data compiled by voteview.com, which showed his voting record on things like the economy and other issues was actually far beyond the mean for the caucus. And comparing him to the three previous speakers who have come before, including Kevin McCarthy, he is far more conservative. Do you really think this is the individual that best represents the Republican conference as a whole?
I think he will, and I think that's because we know his heart, we know his principles are conservative principles, and yet he's able to reach out to all segments of the conference to bring everybody together to get to 218 votes needed to pass important legislation. He's done that on the Judiciary Committee, he's done that on the Oversight Committee, the Weaponization Committee, and so I'm optimistic that he'll be able to relate to all members of the conference, including the moderates, to meet their concerns and develop an agenda that delivers for the American people.
Congressman, will you be helping Jim Jordan whip votes tonight now that we know there won't be another round until tomorrow morning at 11?
Well, I have and I will continue to support Jim Jordan and to urge my colleagues both publicly and privately in private conversations to support him and to come around. I'm on the Appropriations Committee, so some of those votes are committee members of mine, fellow committee members, and I'll be talking to them moving forward and hopefully explaining to them how Jim Jordan can be that man we need right now in this perilous time.
All right. Well, Jordan going to try again to get the gavel at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Congressman Ben Cline, we thank you very much for your time.